The crown rests heavy on the skull of a dead king. His marble tomb lies cold in Florence, yet his whispers echo through every boardroom, every war room, every silent corridor where power changes hands. You think you understand the world? You think hard work and honesty will save you? Then you are exactly where they want you, on your knees, serving masters who learned what you refused to know. Tonight, the veil lifts. You stand at the threshold of a forbidden library, one that kings studied in secret and servants were forbidden to enter. Inside these walls, Niccolo Machiavelli sits at his desk, ink-stained fingers writing by candlelight. Beside him, Ibn Khaldun charts the rise and fall of empires. Napoleon paces in the shadows, calculating his next conquest. Sun Tzu watches from the corner, silent as a blade. They have been waiting for you. But first, a test of commitment. If you dare to continue this journey, if you wish to enter the secret circle of those who rule rather than obey, type the words, "I rise," in the comments below. This is not a game. This is an initiation. Only those who declare their intent will receive what comes next. The servants will scroll past. The kings will announce themselves. The world is not what they taught you in school. History is written by victors, but the true history, the one that matters, is written in blood and silence. Every empire that rose did so on principles the public never learned. Every fortune built, every throne secured, every dynasty established followed laws that were never spoken aloud in the town square. These are the laws of power, and they are as old as civilization itself. Machiavelli understood this when he wrote in exile, betrayed by the very republic he served. He learned that virtue without power is ash in the wind. Ibn Khaldun watched empires crumble in North Africa and asked, "Why do the mighty always fall?" Sun Tzu knew that battles are won before the first sword is drawn. Napoleon conquered Europe not with more soldiers, but with superior understanding of the human heart and the mathematics of morale. You were raised to be good, to be fair, to trust the system. But the system was designed by those who understand the laws you're about to learn. They never intended for you to discover them. They wanted you productive, compliant, dreaming small dreams while they built empires on your labor. This is your moment of choice. You can close this now, return to comfort, and wonder forever what might have been. Or you can continue, knowing that what comes next will change how you see every interaction, every relationship, every opportunity for the rest of your life. The red pill or the blue pill, the throne or the chains. Machiavelli leans forward in the shadows. He asks you one question. Do you wish to be loved, or do you wish to rule? The answer determines everything. Rome did not fall because of barbarians at the gate. It fell because Romans forgot what made Rome. They grew soft, distracted, entitled. They believed their own propaganda. They thought civilization was permanent, that power could be inherited without being earned. The empire collapsed from within, rotted by the very luxury it created, while men who still remembered hunger and ambition carved it apart like wolves on a wounded elk. This is the first truth they hide from you. Empires are not eternal, but the principles of power are. Walk with me through the Palace of Versailles, where Louis XIV crafted the most sophisticated control system ever designed. Every noble in France was forced to attend court, trapped in endless ritual and ceremony, competing for the king's glance. They called it civilization. It was a cage made of gold. While aristocrats argued over who stood closest to the Sun King, Louis controlled armies, treasuries, and the fate of millions. He understood what you must learn. Spectacle is control. Now cross the Mediterranean to Baghdad in its golden age. The Abbasid caliphs built the House of Wisdom, where scholars from every corner of the known world gathered. But this was not charity, it was strategy. Harun al-Rashid knew that knowledge is the foundation of power, that the civilization which controls information controls the future. While his enemies fought with swords, he conquered with mathematics, medicine, and philosophy. While his empire finally fell, it was not because he was wrong, it was because his descendants forgot. Machiavelli watched these patterns from his study in exile. He had served the Florentine Republic with loyalty and brilliance, only to be imprisoned and tortured when the Medici returned to power. In his cell, broken and betrayed, he made a choice that changed history. Instead of bitterness, he chose understanding. Instead of revenge, he chose documentation. He asked the only question that matters: what is the actual nature of power, stripped of all the lies we tell ourselves? His answer scandalized Europe for 5 centuries. Power, he wrote, does not care about your morality. It does not reward goodness or punish evil. It simply exists, flowing like water to the lowest point, accumulating where the conditions are right. The prince who understands this survives. The prince who clings to fantasy perishes. This is not cynicism, it is physics. This is not darkness, it is sight. Ibn Khaldun observed the same truth in his Muqaddamah. Societies are organisms with life cycles. They are born in hardship and solidarity. They mature through expansion and wealth. They decay through luxury and division. And they die when a hungrier people arrive. The cycle is inevitable unless you understand the mechanism, unless you become the architect instead of the building. You have been living inside someone else's architecture. Every institution, every social norm, every unspoken rule was designed by people who understood these principles. The game has always been rigged. The question is, will you keep playing by their rules, or will you learn to write your own? The first law awaits.
The sheep believes the shepherd protects it from wolves. It never asks why the shepherd also owns a knife. This is Law 1, the foundation upon which all power rests. Reality and appearance are not the same thing, and he who masters the gap between them rules the world. Machiavelli called it the effectual truth versus the imagined truth. Most people live their entire lives in the imagined version, never suspecting the architecture beneath. Consider Julius Caesar on the Ides of March. The senators who murdered him did so in the name of the Republic, of liberty, of Roman virtue. They called themselves liberators. They believed their own story. But within months, Rome descended into civil war, and within years, Caesar's heir became the first emperor, ending the Republic forever. The assassins destroyed the very thing they claimed to save, because they confused their intentions with outcomes. They lived in imagination. Caesar, even in death, had lived in reality. This is the trap that catches millions, believing that good intentions create good results, believing that sincerity is strategy, believing that the universe rewards those who mean well. It does not. The universe is indifferent. Power flows to those who understand causation, not to those who announce their virtue. Napoleon understood this perfectly. He crowned himself emperor in Notre Dame, taking the crown from the Pope's hands and placing it on his own head. The symbolism was clear. Power does not come from divine right or ancient tradition. Power comes from power. But here is what separates genius from brutality. Napoleon understood that France needed the pageantry, needed the ceremony, needed to believe they witnessed something sacred. He gave them the show they craved while keeping the actual mechanism of power firmly in his own hands. The masses require myths. Leaders provide them while operating in truth. Sun Tzu wrote, "All warfare is based on deception." But he meant something deeper than lying. He meant that perception shapes reality more than reality shapes perception. If your enemy believes you are strong where you are weak, you are strong. If the market believes your company is valuable, it is valuable. If the people believe their leader is chosen by destiny, that leader has power beyond what any army could provide. This is not about becoming dishonest. This is about understanding that there are two worlds: the visible world of appearances and the invisible world of actual forces. Children live in the visible world. Kings live in both. Law 1 demands you answer a question. In your life right now, where are you confusing appearance with reality? Where are you being judged by optics instead of results? Where are you trapped in someone else's narrative about who you are? The servant accepts the story. The king writes it.
Machiavelli asked the question that got him banned from heaven and hell alike. Is it better to be loved than feared, or feared than loved? The preachers called him evil for even asking. The philosophers condemned him. The church put his books on the index of forbidden works. But every king who read him in secret knew the truth. Machiavelli was not teaching immorality. He was teaching survival. He was showing you the operating system beneath the user interface. His answer was precise. One should wish to be both, but because it is difficult to unite them in one person, it is much safer to be feared than loved when one of the two must be dispensed with. This is Law 2. Fear is reliable. Love is not. Walk through history and count the betrayals. Caesar loved Brutus. Brutus stabbed him anyway. The Romanovs were beloved by their servants. Those servants watched as revolutionaries executed the entire family. King Charles I of England believed in the divine right of kings and the loyalty of Parliament. They beheaded him in public. Love is conditional. Love is emotional. Love changes when circumstances change. Fear is mathematics. When a person fears the consequences of betrayal more than they desire its rewards, they remain loyal. Not because they want to, because the equation demands it. This is not about cruelty for its own sake. This is about understanding the architecture of human behavior. Stalin understood this. So did Genghis Khan. So did every Roman emperor who survived more than 5 years. They built systems where disloyalty was irrational. But here is the subtlety that separates tyrants from masters. The best fear is invisible. Modern corporations don't threaten employees with violence. They threaten them with irrelevance. The fear of being replaced. The fear of being left behind. The fear of losing status, losing meaning, losing the narrative of success they've built their identity around. Silicon Valley runs on this elegant fear, invisible, unspoken, but absolutely effective. Ibn Khaldun observed that when a dynasty loses asabiya, social cohesion born from shared struggle, it becomes vulnerable no matter how large its armies.
Why? Because fear without perceived legitimacy creates rebellion. The secret is not fear alone. It's fear combined with the appearance of inevitability. When people believe your power is permanent, natural, destined, they stop looking for alternatives. They internalize the hierarchy. This is why Napoleon's soldiers died for him by the thousands. Not because they loved him, though many did, but because losing without Napoleon was unthinkable. He had constructed such a powerful narrative of French destiny under his command that fear and love merged into something stronger: identity. You do not need to be cruel. You need to be clearly consequential. You need people to understand bone deep that their outcomes depend on their relationship with you. That calculation, cold, clear, and constant, is worth 1,000 emotional appeals. The servant begs for love. The king commands respect. There is a difference.
Your reputation arrives in a room before your body does. It negotiates on your behalf, intimidates your enemies, attracts your allies, and determines your price. This is Law 3. In the economy of power, perception is currency, and he who controls his image controls his fate. The medieval kings knew this when they built cathedrals that took centuries to complete. The cathedrals were not about God, they were about awe, about making the common man feel small and the king feel chosen. Louis XIV spent today's equivalent of billions on Versailles. Critics called it wasteful. He called it necessary. L'État, c'est moi. I am the state. But he did not simply declare this. He built it in marble and gold, in gardens that stretched to the horizon, in a palace that declared to every visitor, France is the sun, and I am France. When foreign ambassadors visited, they walked for hours through corridors of mirrors and wealth before reaching him. By the time they arrived, negotiation was already over. They had been psychologically defeated by architecture. This is the art you must master: strategic mythology. Napoleon was a short man from a minor Corsican family. He should have been nobody. Instead, he became the emperor who conquered Europe. How? He controlled his narrative with the precision of a propagandist and the instinct of a poet. He commissioned paintings showing him crossing the Alps on a rearing stallion, though he actually rode a mule. He spread stories of his miraculous military genius, his photographic memory for soldiers' names, his destiny foretold by prophets. Some of it was true, some of it was enhanced, all of it was intentional. The truth is, facts matter less than the story about the facts. In modern times, consider how certain tech founders craft their image. The visionary who sleeps in the factory, the genius who dropped out of Harvard, the rebel who's changing the world. These narratives are constructed as carefully as any military campaign. The product might be excellent, but the mythology makes it inevitable. Apple doesn't sell phones, it sells identity. The customer isn't buying technology, they're buying membership in a tribe of the sophisticated and creative. Saladin understood this when he recaptured Jerusalem. He could have massacred the Crusaders as they had massacred Muslims decades earlier. Instead, he showed mercy, released prisoners, and allowed safe passage. Why? Because he was building a reputation that would echo through centuries. That reputation gave him more power than any battlefield victory could have. It made future enemies hesitate. It made potential allies trust. It made history remember him as noble rather than merely effective. Your current reputation was built by accident, by others, by default. Law 3 demands you take control. You must become the author of your own mythology.
Every interaction is a scene. Every choice is a brushstroke. Every word is a brick in the palace of perception. The question is not who you are. The question is who the world believes you are. In the court of Elizabeth I, there lived a man named Francis Walsingham. History remembers the Queen, but it was Walsingham who kept her alive. He built England's first secret service, a spider's web of informants and code-breakers that stretched across Europe. When Catholic assassins plotted to murder Elizabeth and place Mary, Queen of Scots, on the throne, it was Walsingham who uncovered every detail. He even allowed the conspiracy to mature, gathering evidence until he could spring the trap perfectly. Mary lost her head, Elizabeth kept her crown, and Walsingham remained in the shadows where real power lives. This is Law 4. Information is the ultimate weapon, and secrets are the currency of kings. Cardinal Richelieu, the true power behind the French throne, maintained rooms full of spies and informants. He knew every affair, every debt, every whispered conversation in every noble's household. When he moved against an enemy, it was never loud. It was surgical. A letter discovered, a debt called in at the perfect moment, a secret revealed to just the right person. He destroyed threats before they could even recognize they were threats. The Rothschild banking dynasty built its fortune on information speed. In 1815, while Europe waited to learn the outcome of Waterloo, Nathan Rothschild already knew. His private network of messengers was faster than any government's. He bought British bonds while others panicked, making a fortune that laid the foundation for centuries of wealth. The secret was not money. The secret was knowing first. In ancient China, Sun Tzu devoted an entire chapter to spies. He categorized them: local spies, inside spies, reverse spies, expendable spies, and surviving spies. He wrote, "Knowledge of the enemy's dispositions can only be obtained from other men. A general who fights without intelligence is a man gambling in the dark. A general who commands intelligence fights battles before the armies ever meet." This is not about espionage alone. This is about understanding that knowledge asymmetry is power asymmetry. Every successful negotiation begins long before both parties sit at the table. One side knows what the other needs, what they fear, what they're willing to accept. The informed party wins. Every successful business deal works the same way. Every political campaign, every alliance between nations. The person with more accurate information about what's actually happening makes better decisions, spots opportunities others miss, avoids disasters others stumble into. Modern power works identically. Why do tech companies offer free services? Because your data, your patterns, preferences, and predictions is more valuable than your money. Why do intelligence agencies vacuum up communications globally? Because in the information age, he who sees everything decides everything. But here is the deeper layer. The most valuable secret is not what you know about others. It's what others don't know about you. The perfect strategist appears transparent while remaining opaque. He encourages others to reveal themselves while keeping his own counsel. He seems open while his true thoughts remain a fortress. The servant gossips. The king listens. There is a difference. Alexander the Great conquered the known world by age 33. By age 34, he was dead. His empire, built on the force of his personality and the edge of his sword, fragmented immediately. His generals carved it into pieces and fought over the scraps for generations. What took a genius a decade to build collapsed in months because it was an empire of conquest, not an empire of systems. Now consider Rome, not the Rome of legends, but the Rome of institutions. The Senate, the roads, the legal codes, the military structure, the aqueducts. These systems outlived every emperor, survived every crisis, and kept the empire functioning even when incompetent men wore the purple. Rome fell eventually, but it took 1,000 years. Why? Because it was not built on personalities. It was built on architecture that transcended any individual. This is Law 5. The amateur builds empires, the master builds systems. Imagine Ibn Khaldun in his study, writing his masterpiece while empires burned around him. He had seen dynasties rise and fall, watched powerful men disappear into history's dust. What did he learn? That personal power is temporary, that charisma fades, that genius dies. But cycles continue, patterns persist. The civilization that understands this and builds institutions stronger than individuals survives the death of any leader. Look at the Catholic Church, not as religion, but as a system. It has survived 2,000 years, countless heresies, corrupt popes, military defeats, and the entire collapse of the Roman Empire it was born into. How? Because early on, it became more than personalities. It became structure, hierarchy, process, ritual. Any pope could die, but the papacy continued. This is immortality through architecture. In modern times, consider how certain families maintain wealth across generations, while most fortunes dissipate within 3. The difference is never the size of the fortune, it's the presence of systems. Family offices, trusts, education structures, governance rules. These families don't rely on each generation producing another genius. They build mechanisms that protect wealth and multiply opportunities regardless of individual capability. Or examine successful companies. Apple lost Steve Jobs, the man who was supposedly irreplaceable, and continued thriving. Why? Because Jobs spent his final years not just designing products, but building systems. The design culture, the supply chain excellence, the marketing philosophy, the decision-making frameworks. He built a machine that could generate innovation without him. Genghis Khan understood this near the end. He built not just an empire, but the Yasa, a legal code that governed Mongol society. He established the relay system that allowed communication across his vast territory. He created meritocracy in military ranks. His biological empire fragmented, but his systemic innovations influenced Asia for centuries. You are mortal. Your energy will fade. Your genius will age. Your body will fail. But if you build systems, processes, institutions, cultures, patterns that exist independent of your presence, you achieve something beyond survival. You achieve continuity. The servant builds a career. The king builds a dynasty. The master builds a civilization. What are you building?
Keep your friends close and your enemies closer, but understand this: the line between them is drawn in sand, not stone. Frederick the Great of Prussia knew this when he allied with France against Austria, then betrayed France to ally with Britain, then made peace with Austria against them both. His contemporaries called him treacherous. He called it survival. His tiny kingdom was surrounded by empires. He had no permanent friends, only permanent interests. This is Law 6. Alliances are tools, not marriages, and the master knows when to forge them and when to break them. Walk beside Machiavelli through the Italian Renaissance, where city-states formed and dissolved alliances faster than seasons changed. Florence allied with Venice against Milan, then with Milan against Venice, then with the Pope against both. Betrayal was not aberration, it was statecraft. The families who survived were not the most loyal, they were the most adaptable. The Medici did not rule Florence for centuries by maintaining the same alliances.
They ruled by maintaining the same objective, Medici supremacy. Everything else was negotiable. Napoleon demonstrated both the power and the danger of this principle. His genius lay partly in his ability to form coalitions, convincing former enemies to fight alongside him, turning conquered peoples into allies, building a European system with France at its center. But he made one critical error. He believed his own legend. He thought himself indispensable. When he invaded Russia, every ally watched to see if he would bleed. When he did, they abandoned him. The moment he was vulnerable, his empire of convenience evaporated. Here is the paradox you must master. You need allies desperately, but you must never need any ally absolutely. The Ottoman Empire lasted 6 centuries by perfecting this balance. They maintained relationships with Venetian merchants while fighting Venetian armies. They allied with France against the Habsburgs while maintaining trade with Habsburg territories. They played European powers against each other while building their own strength. They were everyone's potential friend and everyone's potential enemy. This ambiguity was power. In modern contexts, this principle appears everywhere. Corporations form partnerships while developing competing products. Nations maintain diplomatic relations while conducting economic warfare. Individuals network extensively while keeping options open. This is not cynicism, it is sophistication. The naive person believes relationships are about feelings. The strategist understands relationships are about convergence of interests, and interests change. But here is the subtlety. Appearing to be a loyal ally is as important as being strategically flexible. The reputation for reliability attracts better opportunities. The key is distinguishing between the performance of loyalty and the suicide of blind loyalty. You must be the ally people want while maintaining the freedom of action you need. Saladin allied with Crusader kingdoms against other Muslims when it served him. Richard the Lionheart negotiated with Saladin even while their armies fought. Both understood that today's enemy might be tomorrow's necessary partner, and vice versa. The servant chooses sides emotionally. The king chooses sides strategically. The master makes others choose his side.
Most men see the rain and seek shelter. The master sees the rain and plants seeds. This is Law 7. Power belongs to those who think in decades while others think in days. The immediate is seductive. The urgent screams for attention. But greatness is built in the long storms by those who understand that empires are grown, not grabbed. That wealth compounds. That reputation accumulates. That systems mature. And that patience, weaponized correctly, defeats speed every time. The Qing dynasty ruled China for nearly 3 centuries. It did not rise through a single brilliant military campaign. It rose through decades of careful preparation, strategic marriages, cultural adaptation, and incremental expansion. The Manchu leaders spent a full generation learning Chinese governance before they even attempted to rule. When they finally moved, the transition seemed almost inevitable. This is the art of the long game. Consider the strategy of the British East India Company in subduing the Indian subcontinent. They did not arrive with armies demanding surrender. They arrived as merchants requesting trade rights. They played regional princes against each other, offering military support here, financial backing there. Each transaction seemed small, each agreement reasonable. But over a century, these incremental moves accumulated into total control. They conquered India one contract at a time. Bismarck unified Germany through what seemed like isolated incidents over decades. A diplomatic insult here, a border dispute there, a carefully provoked war at precisely the right moment. Each step appeared reactive, defensive, almost accidental. But when the German Empire was finally proclaimed in 1871, every piece had been positioned exactly where it needed to be.
He had played chess while his opponents played checkers. The characteristic of the long storm is this: while it is happening, it does not look like a storm at all. It looks like business as usual. It looks like small changes, minor adjustments, barely noticeable shifts. The target does not recognize they are being surrounded until the circle closes. The market does not realize disruption is coming until the new paradigm already dominates. The rival does not understand they are being maneuvered into irrelevance until escape becomes impossible. This requires something most people cannot sustain: vision without immediate validation. The ability to work toward outcomes you will not see this week, this month, perhaps not even this year. The discipline to choose the strategically correct action over the emotionally satisfying reaction. The strength to be misunderstood in the short term to be proven right in the long term. Jeff Bezos built Amazon on this principle. While analysts mocked the lack of profits, he built infrastructure. While competitors focused on quarterly earnings, he focused on market dominance. The world thought he was failing. He was planting seeds in a storm everyone else was running from. Ibn Khaldun wrote that dynasties have natural life cycles, but those who understand the cycles can extend their reign. The secret is not fighting time, it is working with time, using its weight as leverage rather than resisting its passage as loss. The servant wants results today. The king plants trees whose shade he will never sit under. Time is the ultimate weapon. Learn to aim it.
You have walked through the hidden corridors now. You have seen what they kept from you. In the Palazzo Vecchio, Machiavelli's ghost finally rises from his desk. Ink-stained and unbowed, he asks you, "Now that you know, what will you do?" Because knowledge without action is decoration. Theory without practice is philosophy for cowards. You can memorize every law, study every historical example, understand every principle, and remain exactly where you are unless you cross the threshold from knowing to becoming. The 7 laws are not guidelines, they are physics. They operate whether you acknowledge them or not. The only question is whether you will wield them or be subject to them, whether you will write the rules or follow someone else's script, whether you will ascend or remain content in comfortable servitude. Let me tell you what separates those who transform their lives from those who simply consume this information and change nothing. It is not intelligence. Intelligent servants are everywhere. It is not opportunity. Opportunities are wasted daily by those who cannot recognize them. It is not even courage, though that matters. It is decision. The decision to see yourself as the architect of your own fate rather than a passenger in someone else's vehicle. The decision to stop asking permission and start commanding space. The decision to operate by the actual rules of power rather than the fairy tales sold to keep you manageable. This decision is not made once. It is made daily in small moments when no one is watching, in choices that seem insignificant until years later when you realize they built your kingdom stone by stone. Napoleon began as an artillery officer from nowhere. Saladin was born into a military family, not royalty. The Medicis were bankers before they were princes. Machiavelli himself was a minor civil servant. None of them were chosen by destiny. They chose themselves. They decided they would be consequential, and then they learned what consequential people must know. You stand now where they once stood, at the beginning, armed with knowledge, facing a world that will not yield simply because you have learned its secrets. The world will test you. It will offer comfort in exchange for ambition. It will mock your vision. It will reward your competitors who play by different rules.
It will make you question whether this path is worth the price. This is the final test. Will you remember what you learned here when it would be easier to forget? If you have read this far, you are not like the others. Something in you recognized truth when it appeared. That recognition is the first qualification for entry into the circle of those who shape reality rather than accept it. Subscribe now. Join the secret circle of power. Not because I need you, but because you need what comes next. The laws deepen, the secrets multiply. The architecture reveals itself layer by layer to those who prove they are serious. The throne awaits those brave enough to claim it. Are you ready to rise?